Hi everyone, welcome back to Crochet Rocks. My name's Tracy, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how I make my seat cushion covers for my garden furniture. I've been doing them for quite a while now, and those who are regular to my channel will have seen them evolving as time goes by. But now I've got quite, I'll say good at it, but quite used to doing them. I've learned a few tips along the way. So I thought I'd share with you how I managed to make them fit nice and snug, and how I do the shaping. So if I lift this gimbal up, you can see that the cushion cover, this is just one side that I've made so far, and this is the actual seat. It's tapered at both ends, more so on one end, but the shaping that I do is even and it works out. So this is acrylic yarn and it does stretch, so this is how I make it nice and tight all the way around, so it is quite doesn't go all baggy and stuff. So I'm making this with Aldi Yarn, and these are the Aldi cakes. They're not the softest, so there's not really very much that you can do with them. I don't think I'd even want this as on next to my skin. It's not too rough when you've got it over you, but it's no good for a baby or a child or anything. It's just a little bit too firm and rough. It doesn't feel too bad when I've got it over me like that, but I wouldn't want to wear it. So it's perfect for the garden furniture because it is quite robust, this yarn. So I'm going to do the other side and show you how I put them together. And how I do that is I kind of want it to fit this cushion cover and to lay on top and just have a little bit of room to spare. So I've got kind of, I guess, an inch or so all the way around, because it's not on straight. So there'll be an inch, maybe inch and a half in places, but it fits just right for me when I pull it, and it will go in shape. It'll go quite nice. So that's how I do it. So that's what you kind of want to aim for, so that you've got this nice even spread all the way around. So what I'm doing is I'm using this, I think it is, let me just check. It's a 5.5 millimeter crochet hook, because although this is supposedly a 3-weight DK yarn, it is quite chunky for that. And I've got my scissors handy. So how I do that, I've got my yarn inside my yarn bag, which is a bit squished up at the moment because there's nothing to keep the sides up. So it's not going to roll around the floor. I'm just going to pull out some yarn. And how I do that then is by just making a slip knot and a chain of 40. So what you want to do is, if you're doing a cushion, you want to kind of lay it against the cushion, and you want that good inch roughly either side for the stretch. So make a slip knot. Now you can do that any way that you like. I was taught to make a loop, go around the back and pull it through, and you've made your slip knot. So insert my hook, and I'm going to chain 40. So a chain is yarn over and pull it through that loop. Yarn over, pull it through the loop. And I'm going to do 40 of those. So I will pause the video now while I do those 40, because when you count, there's nothing worse than somebody else counting at a different rate, and it puts you off. So if you haven't already, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell. You'll be informed when there are new videos. There's a lot coming at the moment. Seem to be uploading a fair amount. So I'm just going to pause it now and do my 40 chain. I've now done 40. So I want 40 stitches altogether, so I'm going to do one extra for my turning chain. So now we're going to work along here, and we're not going to go into our first chain here from the hook. This loop, it doesn't count. This is our first one. So I'm going to go into the second one, and I'm going to do, in the UK, a half treble, and in the US that's called a half double. We do that by yarning over and going into that stitch, yarning over and pulling up a loop. So we have 3 on our hook. So we yarn over and pull through all 3. And that's a half treble in the UK or a half double in the US. So that's how we do that. Now I'm going to do 1 in every single stitch along. So that's yarn over, into the chain, yarn over, pull up the loop, yarn over, pull through all 3. I'm just going to do 1 in every single stitch all the way to the end. Just like that. Okay, so that's what they should be looking like. So I'm going to pause the video then, and I'm going to just do 1 in every chain all the way to the end. Okay, so this is my very last one. There's my knot. So I'm going to do my last one. And now I'm going to turn my work. But before I do, I'm going to make 1 chain and pull it down. So I don't want it to be big. I don't want it to sort of stick up and be confusing as to where my my first stitch is. So now we're going to start increasing, because I worked out just by offering it up the first time that starting off with 40 is kind of nice, and it kind of fits like this, but it's kind of nice and snug to this side with my inch to spare. And then by increasing, I increased to 50. So that's what I want to do now. I want to start my increases. And how I'm going to do that is by doing 2 stitches in my first stitch. So I'm going to do 1 and 2 in that first stitch only, and then just carry on doing 1 half treble UK, half double US in every single stitch right to the end. But that will start to shape just right for the edge of my cushion cover. I didn't want to do an increase at the start of both ends because it would make my increase too rapid for the shape of the cushion. But if your cushion had a much faster sort of curve to it, you might want to do your increases both ends, at the start in the first stitch and the last stitch. But at the moment, because this is kind of a gradual size increase on that cushion, I just want to do it on one end. So that's all I'm going to do for now. I'm going to pause the video and carry on, and I'll pick up with you when I get to the end of this row. Okay, so I'm almost at the end, and I just want to show you now that you can spot where your stitches are by the V's. Then you'll know that this here was your little chain. That's why I kind of kept it nice and snug. I don't like it sticking out too far anyway. So you just carry on to the very last stitch. And do your last one. Again, one chain, but snug it down and turn your work. And that's how I'm going to carry on, just doing one increase in that first stitch only, which is here. And then one in each stitch along. Now this Aldi yarn, most Aldi yarn that I've been getting recently, it's really improved over the years, but where everything else has really improved in its texture, and there are very few faults in it now, where it used to be full of joins and faults. It's not anymore. It's actually really nice yarn. but the one exception are these cakes. Then there are lovely colours. There's some beautiful baby colours, but it's not something that I could ever dream of using for a baby. But for household items, making bags, beach bags, anything like that, it's actually really good, robust yarn. As you can see, it's not very drapey. It possibly would be if I'd used a larger hook. It might have had more drape to it, but I didn't really want this to be holey. The other cushion that I made in this yarn, I did with a big granny square, and of course that meant that there are holes in it. Whereas I did my other cushions with this stitch, because it's nice and it's tight, so it's not like a big holey stitch. So when it pulls, it doesn't pull any kind of gaping holes. So I'm not a fan really of big gaps in my crochet, unless they're called for, in a lacy stitch or something. I'd much rather have it, when it's for something like a cushion cover, I'd much rather have it tight and neat, like this. Not even using a UK treble, which is a US double crochet. I'd just rather use either a UK double, which is a single, or the half treble, which is the half double, because they're nice, snug, tight little stitches, and they're just perfect for things like this, really. And I don't really want anything that's going to start pulling holes. So I'm almost at the end of this round, so I might as well carry on where I've been chatting. And so when you get to the end, you don't increase, you just work into the last one and increase at the beginning of our next row. Row, it is a row. Not a round, is it? So this is my end now. So if you see there is your last stitch, because I snug my chain down, so you can see the stitch there is a V. So there's my last one, my chain which I snug down. And I think, just pulling out some yarn, I think by snugging those chains down, it gets you onto the next row. It doesn't make it shallower than the rest of your crochet, but it makes your edges straight and neat. By snugging that last one down, you don't get any of those bumpy edges. It works on this stitch and with the UK double, which is the US single. And when I'm doing a single, I will go in sometimes into my end chain rather than my stitch at the end. It's so short, you see it kind of easy. So that's all I'm going to do now, is continue increasing at the start of every row until I have 50 stitches. Now, of course, if you've got a cushion that you want to cover, you might need less. It just depends. Just keep putting that up against the cushion itself, and you'll see, as long as your 1 inch gap all the way around is consistent, you'll know where the last part of your increases have to be. But for me, they're 50, so I'm going to carry on now, increasing at the beginning of my rows until I've got 50 stitches, and then I'll come back to you. Now I've done all my increasing until I have 50 stitches, and you can see it started to come out nicely at the sides. If this was the first one, then you would now just carry on without increasing until you were kind of this far from the end. And you can tell that because if you have if you place it here, you can see roughly where you need to start to decrease so that it matches the other side. So it's kind of here, and you start your increasing, and then you need to carry on straight along this edge and then start to decrease an equal distance. So I find with I put this one on top, then you can see it kind of follows the line where these buttons are. Just kind of follows that line, so it kind of increased to there, and then we just carry on straight until we get to the top part of the cushion where we start to taper back in again. And it's hard to show you because I can't really zoom out, but I'm zoomed out all the way I can. So now all we got to do is carry on without increasing. Once you've done one side, of course you've got to just match it up to the one that you've already made. So by placing those on top of each other, I know that I've got approximately 5 inches before I have to start decreasing, but I can lay one on top of the other, matching them up, and as soon as I see that that's the point where I decrease, then I can do that. It's just a case of the first one, you know that you've got perhaps 4 or 5 inches where you're you're increasing at the beginning, and then 5 inches, and then the next 5 are you're decreasing, and I'll show you how to do that. But for now, just keep going straight with no increases at each side until you've reached the point where your cushion no longer needs any. I can try and get this up a little bit. Whoops. I don't know if I can do it. No. Stupid thing. If you can see this one, it kind of tapers up. So my increases are here, and then I need to go to this point and then start my decreases. It's quite simple when you're looking at it. Once you're into you've got the kind of length you need, it's very easy to see where you stop, and you know that this is the amount of 10 rows of decreasing will give you exactly the same size as this. So I'm going to carry on now until my work measures about 5 or 6 inches, until I need to do my decreasing. Just keep going straight, one in each, exactly the same, and turning, doing the one chain but cinching it down and going in the first stitch all the way until you need to start your decrease, and then I'll come back to you. Right, so now as I have already got one, and this is the one I'm going to match it up to. Obviously with your first one you would be matching it up to your cushion. So there we are. I've got 1 inch all the way around this side, and these sides here, this side and this side. So more or less, it doesn't matter if it doesn't curve, it's quite all right. So now I have the same amount here as up here. So I'm now ready to start my decreasing. Because I've already completed one, I know the exact amount to match it up. So what I need are 11 remaining rows. And the reason I have 11 remaining rows is because I have 10 decrease rows, and just as we started with one full row without any increases, we finish with one full row without a decrease. So we've got a completely perfect edge with no decreasing. So now I'm ready to start the decrease rows, and all I'm going to do, just as I increased at one side on every row, now I'm going to do that with a decrease instead. So I need to do my chain and cinch it down as normal, and I'm going to yarn over. I'll zoom in just for this little decrease so that you can see it better. I yarn over and I go into my first stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, and then this is how I do mine. I just go into the next stitch, yarn over and pull through. So I then yarn over. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 loops on my hook, and I just pull through all 4 of them, and that's my decrease. I've gone into both those stitches, and now I just do 1 in each stitch all the way to the end, and I'm going to do this just one at the beginning of each row, not each end, just the beginning for the next 10 rows. But the rest of my stitches will all be my UK half treble, which is half double in the US. I just need to pull out some yarn, got stuck on the Velcro on my bag. So I just carry on all the way to the end of the row, and the start of the next row again I do another decrease, and I just carry on like that until I've got 40 stitches. So that's 10 rows. Decrease 1 at the start of each row will give me back the same 40 stitches that I started with. So I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to make it to the end, and I will show you once again when I get to the end how I start my next row. I've almost made it to the end. I've got 2 more stitches to do, and this is how my last stitch always looks because of the way I do my beginning of the row. So I'm going to do my chain, cinch it down so it's not sticking up, and turn my work. And here we are, ready to start my decrease. So I'm going to yarn over, pull up my first loop as normal, just go into the next stitch, yarn over and pull it up. So that's 4, and go through all of the loops. And I'll just go into every other stitch along. All the way to the end, and I'm going to carry on doing that for another 8 rows until I have 40 stitches. So I'm going to pause the video, and I'm going to carry on decreasing by 1 at the beginning of every row for 8 rows until I've got my 40, and then I will come back and show you what to do next. So this is my very last stitch on my decreasing rows. So I've got 40 stitches. I'm going to do my chain, cinch it down, and now I'm just going to do 1 row of 1 UK half treble or half double US in every stitch along. So that's just 1 in every one all the way to the end. Nice and simple. And then when you get to the end, I'm just going to end off, and I will show you how I join it together. So I'm going to pause the video, and I shall meet up with you when I get to the end of this row. Okay, so I'm almost at the end. I'm just going to finish off in my last stitch. Not gone through both loops, hold on, there we go, and just leave a nice long tail for weaving in, and cinch it down and pull it through. So now we've got 2 pieces that are exactly the same, and I'm going to match them together. So going back to how you judge this, this is the cushion. So if you needed if it was very short space where you can do your decrease and increase in, then I would do it either end. But because I wanted a slow, gradual decrease and increase, I did it at just one end. But you just kind of manipulate it whichever way you want. So now that we've got our pieces, it's just a case of putting them together, putting them in, and securing them. So I'll show you on one of the finished ones how I do this. Now this is my one I sit on in the garden all the time, and so what I've done is on 3 edges I have secured them with a slip stitch by crocheting all the way along and around the top. So I do this without the cushion inside, and then along the 3rd edge. And then when I get to this part, I end off. and I'll go around, you know, right around to the beginning of the increase in. So this is my first row. So then I stuff my cushion in, and it is a tight fit at first, and then I over sew, just using the yarn or a contrasting colour if you want to be able to see it, and I over sew all the way along this join, and I kind of pinch it together and end off and sew it in. And the reason I do that is because I don't want to put a zip in, I don't want to put buttons on it, I just want to secure it. So if I want to take this out for washing, then all I do is snip this piece of over sewing. You can see the over sewing, you can see every line of it. So I just snip that, pull it out, wash it, put it back in, and then using one of the colours or the same yarn, because I've got a bit left over, I over sew it back shut again. And to me, that's far more secure than me putting a zip in or putting buttons in, which you don't really want to lean on. And sometimes they don't lay nice and flat anyway. They kind of end up dipping, and I don't like that look. So it's much easier for me just to sew my cushion in. It's not like it's coming off for washing all the time. It's just going to sit on the garden furniture. But when I feel like it needs a wash, I'll undo it, take it out, wash it, and then just tack it back shut again. So that's basically how I do that. So I'm going to show you with my two pieces. Just going to get my yarn because I dropped it and it fell to the floor. It's in my yarn box, so it wasn't getting dirty or anything. I just dropped it, so it kind of stayed on the yarn box. So now I want to make sure that I have both the right sides facing outwards, and that just means that any side is the same, I know, but this is the first side that I did was the right side. So I want to start at this corner. This is going to be the end that I'm going to sew shut. So I get my yarn, and obviously you can sew all your ends in before you start or after you've finished. It doesn't really matter. So let's just move this a little bit. I'll just get my corners. So there's my first stitch, and there we are. And I do that in this one as well. And I just grab my end, leave a nice long tail to secure that, and I just bring my loop through and go in every kind of making sure that they're together, and I bring that through and I slip stitch. I don't know if you saw that. I'll do it again. I did move my camera, so let's move it over this way a little bit. So again, I just go in to my next stitch at the very end, and the corresponding one the other side, which is nice and easy to spot because it's orange on this one. Yarn over, pull it through and pull it through that loop. So I slip stitch it. Again, I go into this one, and when you're holding it yourself, it's far easy to see. And I'll go through that one as well. See the yellow one? I'll just zoom in a little bit. I don't want to zoom too much because it's easy to go off. And I pull that through. See what I mean? When it's zoomed too much, it's very easy to lose where you are. So go into my next stitch, obviously into the very end part, and again into that one, the corresponding one the other side. Yarn over, if I can get it through, and slip stitch it. So it just ends up, because I'm doing it a little bit, as my dad would call it, cack-handedly, because I'm showing you, it's not as neat as it would be if I was just sitting there on my chair holding it. But you just make a nice, there we are, it goes like a chain up one end, but really all you're getting is an edge like this one all the way around. I think it just finishes it nicely. It just kind of gives you that edge. I'm not sure if I actually went round and did I think I did. I went round the whole of this one and did a single crochet and went through the tops of the single crochet on those, but they were smaller. this one's wider, so I don't really need to do that. But if you felt that you wanted to do that, if it was narrower and you thought it might look better, then by all means you can. So just go through each side, but hold it this way. I might get my yarn tangled, come out, and then you can see quite easily which is the next ones to go in. It's difficult with the camera in between it, but there we are. Just pull it through and slip stitch again into the next one, all the way through, so you've got both of them, yarn over and slip stitch. So I'm going to do that all the way round like a horseshoe. Obviously when you get to this part, you're just going along your top edge. It's ever so simple, just catching both sides, nothing difficult about it. Just going through each corresponding side. Sorry, I'm wobbling my camera, still zoomed in, and slip stitch. And there we are. Once I pull that open a little bit, and then you just get this nice kind of edge that you're pinching, you see, and it comes like a bump, so you get that nice kind of ridged border around the outside. If you wanted to do those like single crochet all the way around, double crochet UK, single crochet US, all the way around, that's what it would look like, but I don't feel I have to do it with this one. This yarn is so much bulkier than that yarn. That one was was it called Magic Aran, which I got from Pound Stretcher, where these Aran cakes are much thicker in the yarn itself, so I don't think I need to do that with these. So just carry on all the way around. Zoom out a little bit, it's easier. All the way around, getting the corresponding one of each side, and get that. So once you've got all the way around to this end, you end off, stuff in your cushion and sew it up. So I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to go all the way around my two sides, and I shall see you when I get back to this point. So I've made it all the way around, catching that edge. I'm going to cut off a long tail and just do an end off, cinch that down, so that will get sewn in. Now what I do is just get this cushion and pop it in there. It's a bit difficult to do this on camera, so I'm going to pause the video a second. Okay, so that's all in. It's nice and snug. I'll just lift it up and show you. It does go in, it's all nice and snug. It does work its way looser, so just got to get out one of these, nice big eye, and cut myself a nice long sewing up thread and thread all this needle. And you can, obviously, if you are way more patient than I'm just going to pop all my ends inside, and then I'm going to just whip stitch, just going to secure it first. Don't have to be ultra precise. Going to just leave a long thread in case it comes out, and then I can sew it in. Just going to put a double knot in there. As you can see, I am not a seamstress, so it is a snug fit, but that's what we want. And I'm going to just get the end out of the way. I'm just going to catch each one all the way along like this. And the next one, and sew that up just like that. And I know it notices, but because it's a variegated yarn, it's not too much of a problem. And plus you can just put this is only a cushion for the back of the garden on a chair, so I would just put that part that's at the back, and I have one on top of the other, and they just sit there at the back, and if I need to I can undo it, take it out to wash it. So I just constantly all the way along whip stitch, put it nice and tight, and I'm going to close that whole edge. So I'm just going to pause the video now, and I'm going to sew this all the way along. It feels rather snug and tight, not tug and snite, but snug and tight, but it does give. They all become a bit loose in the end. So I'm just going to pause the video now and kind of over sew that all the way along the edge. So I'm almost there, and what I've done is at both ends I just caught that end to sew in, and just securing that in there, so you couldn't really see that end. This one's popping up a little bit because I'm trying to show you how I'm doing it. So I'm just going over those ends as well, almost to the end. So I'm just going to pause the video again because it's easier to put it on my lap to do this. So I've made it all the way to the end, and all I'm going to do now is over this part here, just secure my end. It's getting a bit curly, just by making a little knot through it, going back through its loop, and then I'm just going to bury this inside, go all the way along, and come out the other side. Just tuck that in there, turn it over because it's come out that side, and I'm just going to go back and bury it again on the reverse side. That's it, and then just snip it off, pulling it a little bit so it's stuck inside, and there we are. We've got our stuffed cushion, and it, as I say, it's a little bit tight at the moment, and there's our nice kind of edges all the way around. See, there it is. It just looked like it's fit to burst in, but the yarn does give after a little while. So I can't zoom out anymore, but that's my finished cushion. So that's how you can judge how to do your shaping and to make a cushion. And if you don't want to be bothered with zips and all of that, you can just sew it like this, like I do, little cheat way, and then you can easily see if you're using all one colour, then you'll disguise it an awful lot better, but you can just see that over sewing there. But as I say, that is at the back of my seat and this is the front. So after a while it starts to give and even out quite a bit. So thank you for watching. If you haven't already, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and you'll be informed when there are new videos. So thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.